Simon Roberts, who's the author of the Industrial Development Think Tank, joins us now to discuss its report on the necessary structural transformation of South Africa's economy. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And I think the first question I want to get into is, when we say structural transformation of the economy, what exactly are we saying?
So first of all, it's a report that draws on a number of studies that have been done by a team of people at the University of Johannesburg and elsewhere. And what that report does is it looks at the structure of the economy, and it says that fundamentally we have deindustrialized. And we've deindustrialized far too early. And that's very important for our development path, because that industrialization process means building capabilities. It means higher wages. It means a learning process which goes on. And we've lost out on a lot of that compared to other countries, not just very developed countries, but other middle-income countries as well. So if we compare ourselves to countries like Thailand, Malaysia, etc., we've fallen behind. And we're saying that we have to deal with a lot of the governance issues. Dealing with corruption, etc., is very important. But if we don't bring our eye back onto this ball of reindustrialization, we're going to miss out on those benefits.
Simon, to what extent can we attribute this deindustrialization to the fact that South Africa just failed to harness that over 1 billion plus market which is on the African continent and actually surrender it to the Chinese?
We think that's a big part of the program. We're saying it's not too late. We've got capabilities, and we are a big supplier to countries in the region, particularly in SADC.
Southern Africa, yes.
In Southern Africa. But if we don't move very quickly to link our industrialization development trajectory into a SADC industrialization plan, particularly, and the DTI is doing this, but if we don't bring all of government behind that program of action, we're going to miss out on those opportunities. And we're already a bit behind the curve. So we really need to move rapidly to do that. And Chinese and other imports are coming in, obviously, as we know.
Apart from those Chinese imports, as well as that policy certainty you've mentioned, what are those other hindrances that are really just costing us getting back into the groove of things, or on par with the rest of the world?
Well, what we're pointing out as well is the need to open up industrial sectors to new participants. Because we're saying that when you have rivalry coming in, competition, it brings new business models, it brings innovation, it brings creativity in. And when we're talking about new designs, engineering skills, etc., producing solutions for customers, that competitive process is very important. And so that's another dimension which often gets put into another debate, but it's actually part of the industrialization, reindustrialization debate. Because those new businesses, those entrepreneurs, black industrialists, are the ones that are going to bring productivity. They're going to challenge the incumbents, and they're going to make the incumbents more competitive. And that means by being more competitive, you actually have to invest in your workforce as well. So you're not competing on low wages, you're competing on new solutions, better solutions, and bringing design and engineering services into the manufacturing process. So it's not manufacturing or services, it's the two of them together, and those linkages are really critical.
Simon, I have a very big issue with the corporate culture, especially with the SOEs. You're looking at the likes of Transnet, you look at the big boys like Eskom, who are across the continent in, East Africa, West Africa, but the corporate culture is so rotten that it is almost impossible to win tenders, at least government-wise, to win that bridge that infrastructure gap, which is close to $80 billion a year. Now, until that is revised, am I safe in assuming that that needs to be priority number one?
So the kind of corporate culture and the incumbents is a big part of the picture. And we're saying it's not just state-owned enterprises, it's also in the private sector. I mean, we're still seeing the stories coming out about to what extent in the 2000s, cartels were essentially saying, let's take a big share of this for ourselves. We're still seeing this pattern of behavior. And so it's important to say this is business, government, labor, coming together and saying, we're going to commit to investment to compete on capabilities. So I'm not going to compete by corrupting an official to get the grant, nor am I going to compete by or undermine my rivals through collusion or through exclusionary behavior. We're going to compete on the merits.
Right.
And those merits are building capabilities. And so that corporate culture is critical. And there is a huge infrastructure backlog across the continent. And if we get this right, there's a massive potential, but we have to start moving really fast on this.
Let's talk about, I mean, you rightly said a little earlier on in the show that the Department of Trade and Industry has been embarking on quite an extensive program to really industrialize the country. And one of the things, or one of the initiatives they've taken on, is the development of special economic zones. How important are these, and really the benefits they afford to this program of reindustrialization?
So the detailed industry studies, and they cover the metals and machinery sector, the auto sector, also food processing, they demonstrate that these capabilities are built at the local level with local agglomerations. So you're bringing together universities, service providers, providing testing services, infrastructure provision, public transport. These are all really important, and it happens at a local level. So you've got to bring those actors together. What we've seen is that the DTI has got plans in place, but all of the different parts of government have got to come to the table. So we have little islands, little case studies which have succeeded to an extent, but it needs to be at the center of government's development strategy. And at the moment, industrial policy is seen as just the job of the DTI. And that's a problem, because those capabilities are built in metros, in urban areas. And so the DTI, if you like, is kind of struggling to, I think, have that bigger impact, because we need it to be at that center of economic development strategy in the country. And so, if you like, they're really pushing against a lot of different obstacles and challenges, and we've got to mobilize at a much wider level.
There's a recent regional economic outlook by the IMF that did point to, if at all a country does invest in hard infrastructure, it is going to see growth in the midterm close to, 3%. But if it does invest in soft infrastructure, it will see growth in the long term north of 8%. Tell me, what is your take on this particular one, and where would you draw the fence here?
So there's lots of different models which will come up with different percentage growth rates. What we think is that there's huge potential for rapid growth in South Africa. It's not a hard infrastructure versus a soft infrastructure debate. You need the two things together. When we're talking hard infrastructure, I think one of the things we need to recognize is that the infrastructure for maybe the upper middle class has happened. So we have a Gautrain, we have a widened freeway program, and it's subsidized. But we don't see commuter rail coming through, which is actually what factories need to be able to run 3 shifts. So that's very basic hard infrastructure to make people be able to get to work on time and goods get delivered more effectively. You have to tie that to the soft infrastructure. That's your logistics, your software, lower data prices so that people can do digital online retail. So it's the hard, the old, the hard, and the new and the soft. Those things have to come together, otherwise we're not going to reindustrialize, for example, the industrial areas in Gauteng, close to dense urban areas, and yet we are happy with our Gautrain that we can use. The financial sector presumably is quite happy they can get their people to and from work, where we are right now. And so we really need to look at, who has won and who has lost, and we need to rebalance that fundamentally with resources, not just plans.